Welcome to episode 2 of Unplugged with Nicki Marie. You guys did it. You put this podcast in the top rankings of Spotify after week 1. And I am not here to disappoint anyone. I am here to rock this town, rock the Casbah, or rock the Casbah. Today, my guest is one of my longtime BFFs. So who better to talk about adult friendship with than one of my actual best friends? She also happens to be a rock star social emotional coach to kids and parents. And I think this conversation is going to be exactly what you needed. Also, there's going to be 2 parts to this. So part 1 is here today, Monday. It's all yours, 3 p.m., baby. Let's dive right in, shall we? Welcome back to Unplugged with Nicki Marie. Holy cow. This is why I want to do this podcast, because a lot of you see the side of me that's goofy and confident and funny and showing up online every day, but you don't know the behind the scenes, the building blocks of Nicki. So the building blocks of Nicki are about a lot of great people who have been on my path along the way. And without further ado, because I don't like these big long intros, I'm like, I'm here to listen to the meat of it. So are you. You're driving somewhere, you just want to listen. So we have Jessa, one of my best freaking friends in the world. And Jess, I got to tell you why I have you on here, because she doesn't know a lot of it yet, is when I close my eyes and think of adult friendship goals, who do I want to be when I grow up? Who's a really mindful, amazing friend? It's you. And you're laughing. I don't know why, but you are really a great, amazing, thoughtful friend. And so many women right now are lonely and want to be either a great, better friend, or they want accept great friends into their life. Yep. We're isolated and we're looking externally for this like connection. So between you being one of my true BFFs, so we can talk about our stuff, but also we could talk about what you do for a living. You work with kids, many who have special needs, and you teach them about relationships. Yep. And friendship cues and body language. And I've seen you in the works. And honestly, when I've seen you in Southern California doing your thing, I'm inspired because I'm like, I never got that coaching. And I feel like a lot of us need that coaching from way back to when we were little. So I know I just threw a ton at you guys, but Jess, I just want to riff the way we would as friends and talk about a few of those things from like your perspective.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Nick. By the way, I call her Nico for all of you, everyone who knows her as Nicki. And I guess we should introduce the fact that first of all, I think when we talk about friends or friendship, Nico, it really should be about how do we form connections. So what I was saying is, we met in college at UConn. So naturally we met in a group because we all showed up to preseason and we played field hockey at UConn. And so that was our natural belonging. That was our group. You asked me to be on here and I was kind of contemplating about relationships, connection, friendship. I immediately thought about, gosh, like we all do. Why was it so easy or easier when we were so-called in college or younger to form friendships in groups? But I think it's truly because those groups were already formed. And so and also I teach kids in my work, we have to look for common interests in others. And so right away we showed up to UConn. One, we're both going to UConn. One, we're both love field hockey and we're on the field hockey team. So right away, that bond made it easier to form that connection. And I also think on here we can chat more about what's the purpose of friendship, because at the end of the day, we all need different things. And I think the world needs to meet people more where they're at right now. So yes. I think we have to build more compassion and empathy. And I'm subject to it. As you get older, I think we form even more stronger stereotypes, even though we think we don't. We totally do. So, whereas I feel like when you're younger, it also has to do with that developmental stage you're at and social emotionally. We're a little bit more like a blank canvas and we're a little bit more like a sponge. We're able to absorb more. We're able to troubleshoot, and I don't know, we also just don't have nearly as many responsibilities. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
asked Layla on like a separate recording randomly. I said, Layla, I'm going to ask you a quick question because she's got her birthday party tomorrow and we're getting excited for that. And I said, Layla, what does like friendship mean to you? What are qualities that you look for in a friend? And the two things she said were funny and athletic.
yep,
And it's like, that's just, and it's how simple it is. It's a commonality.
yep,
And so what would you say to the people who are, their lives have gone like this, right? A lot of my audience is moms or women
yep,
who eventually want to be a mom or just womanhood stuff. They're finding that the older they get, the less patience they have for their current friendships,
yep,
or the more they're longing for like, who do I even want to hang out with? So
yep.
after lots of like change, what would you say to that?
I think the big question that everyone should kind of think about is, where do you connect presently right now? So what I mean by that is, if you're a mom and your daughter's in soccer, you automatically have soccer mom group. Or maybe you got invited to a book club, or maybe you hear in your community that women are getting together and men and having wine night or happy hour. Or in my community, there's this whole, like, I don't know, rage about pickleball, and
Oh,
all these moms and women are joining pickleball. And at the end of the day, I caught myself because I was invited recently, and I was like, oh God, pickleball? I don't want to play pickleball. But really, again, that was me being judgmental, because really that was somebody reaching out to form a connection and a group. And the idea of pickleball, once I talked to her more, she was like, just so you know, we really play pickleball so that we can have wine after, and we sit at the like club and drink wine, and then sometimes we have dinner, and then we don't have to go back home. So it gives us a little more time as a so-called break from our kids or our other life. So
right.
I think that I think we all as individuals could pause more and think about, what are those groups in your community? And can we be a little more open-hearted and, I don't know, compassionate with ourselves, and willingness to try? I think when we were younger, remember, Nicki, you and I'd be like, let's do this. Yeah, sure. Let's go here. Yeah, sure. Everything was yes.
It was an
Now
adventure.
it's,
Everything was an adventure.
yeah. And it was like, it was so much more fun than now. I feel like, because I think I also, as an adult, get stuck on like, friendships shouldn't be work, but that's BS. They are work. Relationships and connection are work, and we have to be willing to put that time into it. So I think also, again, be graceful with yourself, recognize where you're at. If you're going through a lot at home, then pause for a minute. Maybe don't beat yourself up over that you don't have a so-called group or friends. But I think, again, that's really different for everyone's personality. You and I are quite self-confident internally, which that draws you and I to each other. Like, our cups are badass women, because we really are.
Cheers.
We don't struggle. Sure, maybe we have some internal conflict at times and negative thoughts, like we all do, but in general, you and I can kind of like, we're just, we give off an air that we're extroverted but confident, but can meet our own needs to an extent. So I think not everybody, especially in the women, we're not all like that, right? So I think
But I
that we,
also have always valued your honesty. And that's from the last episode.
Mhm.
It's going to be about like the values that you have, right? Like I value like the people. So let me rewind. A takeaway from last week's episode will be, hey, can you just call somebody and be upfront about what you need? Hey, Jess, I
Yeah,
need 3 minutes where like I don't need advice. I just feel like I need to get this off my chest about what's going on in my relationship.
yep,
I know that you're going to be the person who is honest with me, who is
yep,
also non-judgmental, and you're not going to take that conversation and go talk about it with another circle. Like it's really that simple. Is who are the people that you can cut to the chase with
yep,
and not feel apologetic about like taking their time. I think as women, we want to be independent and empowered and not have to be too vulnerable, right? But
yep,
then what we felt when we left our last Yukon reunion was
yeah.
like, why weren't we doing this more? So
That,
let's talk about that.
yeah. I mean, I think that truly, I was thinking about the word the other day. I think that connection and bond we have as a group of women from Yukon and the team is truly magical. But I also was thinking the other day, like, why, when we come together, are we able to talk about a million different topics. Like, think about the first day when everyone sort of started to arrive at different times, and there were people having all kinds of different sidebar conversations. I think it's really about one, we have core memories that drive us to like want to connect. So we have that desire to always stay connected. And then also we all have a lot to catch up on because we aren't in each other's lives. Like, we all live everywhere. So I don't get to hear about Chase every day, or I don't get to hear about Amy's daughter every day, or what her work is, or whatever it is. So I feel like, again, it has to do with that we don't really have any stereotypes or bias towards each other. We're just being a bit more active listeners. And exactly, example for all you listeners, like, I know the core of Nicki. You guys see one side, and I'll meet people in public, Nicki, that are like, what? I just realized you're friends with Nicki. I'm like, yes, from college. And they're like, really? She's like this? I'm like, yes, pretty much. She's playful and fun and ADHD and impulsive at times and crazy and raw. All those things that, like, all the listeners appreciate, right? And so that's why I feel like those core friendships are so important and lasting. But I do think we could all do a better job at, like, okay, how do we form friendships later? And I see a lot of moms, like, and so and it's a professional friendship that I have with these parents that I'm helping guide them through their parenting, and challenges and trials and tribulations and everything. So I can't get too close to them, but yet there's just that, like, balance of it's still a relationship though, and it's still a connection, right? There's still commonality there. But then I have, like, I am in a different parenting stage than you. For example, I have 2 college daughters, and that's really a challenging parenting stage as well, called emerging adults. That could be a whole nother podcast, Nico, because everybody celebrates me and says, you're an empty nester. And I'm like, you have no idea. I parent more now than I did in high school. If I were to show you my phone every day, how many texts and calls I get. So it's just so, but then I find, for me, I look for, like, oh gosh, do I have friends that are raising college kids that I have that in common with? Versus you, who are raising elementary, right? Yeah. Preteen. But that doesn't mean that I can't listen to.
Fireworks just went off behind you on your screen.
It did?
I don't know if you did something.
I didn't touch it.
No, literally, you must have done this, and it must have been something. I was sitting here like, what is happening? But I'm going to let her keep going. That was amazing. That is a whole other podcast episode, though. You're right. Like, the different phases of motherhood, the different phases of womanhood. Also, I think when I look at you, you are the epitome of knowing your own boundaries. And I want to finish that sentence. I, as a former people pleaser, used to look at some of your boundary setting and think, wow, that's like a lot. That's tough, or that's like rigid, or I used to be, like, deep down, like, uncomfortable at how comfortable you were with setting boundaries, because I wasn't. And now that I've done so much self-work, I want to talk about that. When you met Ryan and he was falling in love with you, you had boundaries for what you were going to do in your life with your relationship. When you had a disappointment with a friendship, you set boundaries for that friendship. You were honest about the things that were bothering you, and you closed the chapter on that friendship. And I used to be like, oh my God, like, how does she do that? I'm uncomfortable watching it because I am not a boundary setter. So I'm going to ask this on a few different layers. The way you were raised, like, look at you and your mom.
Yeah. Yep.
So I want to talk about those values that you learned at a young age, because a lot of us are moms. We want to give that shit to our daughters.
Yep.
And then on an adult level, what ways has it helped you raise adult daughters, but also raise yourself? Like, so you were talking about loneliness, but I don't think what a lot of people are realizing is that they're lonely within themselves too. They haven't worked on them.
Yes. Internal.
Like 4 different things, but I think you can grab what I'm putting down.
Yeah. I think that's a big one is I always say to my moms that I work with, in order for you to show up as your best mom self, you first need to show up for yourself. And that means you need to prioritize. It's not just about self-care. I feel like that's like a buzzword, right? It's what is self-care? I mean, at the end of the day, we do that. We sleep, we eat, we do the basics, right? Maybe we drink too much coffee. Maybe we need to change. There's little things you can always pivot and change. But I think it's more about like, what do you need as a person to have your own internal happiness? So, because for example, you and I are the same. We always say eating healthy, exercise. That's also something in common that you and I have. Well, I also think we live in a much more anxious society, and we need to think about the root cause of that. And so that's, like, where is that? It's easy for us to blame other people or other situations
Or
that
devices.
they're they're so-called sucking my time, they're causing me anxiety. Right then and there, it should be like, oh, if somebody's causing me more stress, then why am I continuing that relationship? So I think people have to be okay with like tapping into your intuition. We all have that. What is your gut telling you about someone? And again, I mean, I would say to you that you know the core of me, but the fault of some of my boundary setting in an older adulthood is people probably are like, oh, like I'm going to use my neighbor as an example. I love her, but she is not a mom. She has a little more time, and her husband really likes her boyfriend really likes my husband, so we hang out sometimes. But I know she's always like, oh, Jess isn't available, or Jess doesn't want to hang out. And it's like, quote unquote, like, oh, yeah, she's probably doing her own thing. Like, so again, there's that stereotype. But yes, for example, I feel like I know and prioritize my sleep. So I don't do well if I stay up past 11 o'clock anymore.
Yes.
So I know, okay, if I'm going to go out, I need to not overdo it, because otherwise the next day I feel kind of guilty inside about, oh, these were the things I wanted to accomplish, or I just want to have a relaxing day, or whatever it is. So I think
that's interesting, because that's a boundary. You're right.
yeah.
That's a boundary, and it's a
And
self-care boundary.
And I've learned, for example, with her, and she knows, they make a joke about it, but I don't take it personally. That's another story. People got to not take things personally. They know, they're like, oh, Jess is going to have one glass of wine and leave. And I'm like, yep, sure am, ladies. Right? Like, they know now. And so I set that so that if I happen to stay longer, they're pleasantly surprised. But I think the message is it's okay to say no. I think the message is you need to dig deeper into what connections and what groups do you want to belong to, and what need will that fulfill for you. Right. And so I know for me, I personally want to talk about the real stuff in life. Like, I want to say it how it is. I really don't want to talk about surface level stuff. I get so bored so easily with that. But I have friends, even long-term friends, who are uncomfortable when you talk about conflict, or when you talk about but I'm also not interested in like hanging out with a bunch of women and we all just shit on our husbands. I'm not interested in that, right? To me, it's always about, I'm always looking for balance. And so I think I recently have checked myself and said, well, I can still invite myself in and give it a try, right? And try to go in with a little more empathy and compassion to whatever stage that person is at. I think I love to listen. I'm very much a people person and curious, and want to know the layers and want to try to help. I'm a natural helper. So, and that totally comes from my upbringing and my mom. And my sister, we were like, the three of us were just so independently driven and strong. And my mom was always unconditionally loving, but also really stressed the importance of my sister and I being independent and being able to make our own choices. So, I mean, I can still remember times where I'd be like, oh, really, Mom? You're going to make me write a list of pros and cons? And she's like, yes, because this is your decision, not mine. So like, I'll never forget when I was trying to figure out colleges. She was like, sure, I have an opinion, but I need you to write down first. So,
We
and I
need your mom eventually with you on a podcast.
totally, she's magical in her ability to form connections and help people form connections. I mean, you know, being a counselor herself and just recently retired, but so well respected at U of M and helping people recognize the power of relationships and connection and understanding, like, that's kind of it comes from your heart. It comes from compassion and empathy, but it also, we're all different. We're all unique. So we need to not criticize people for, oh, she's going out, but she doesn't want to drink. Well, you can still go out. Or I hear women say, well, I don't really drink. I'm not going to join the wine club. Why? Think about that. You could still go and have sparkling water in your wine glass, or like, or a book club. Well, I don't read books. Okay, well, maybe invite yourself in to maybe try to read a book. Or I know people that are in book clubs and they're like, I just go for the social. I don't actually read the book. I'm like, okay.
That would be me. I'd be like, wait, book club, huh?
Yeah.
I'll show up and you guys can give me the recap.
Yeah. So I think boundary setting is huge and really important, but I am not minimizing how hard it is. It's definitely a challenge, but I think every day you have to check yourself. You have to check your energy level. You have to check your willingness to, like, bring something new in, because I think as we get older, we also view, like I said before, we're like, oh boy, how do I initiate a conversation with that mom? Or gosh, it seems like they already have their group. It's like we're reverting back to being teenagers and figuring out how to enter a group.
1,000%.
Yeah.
So this is perfect leeway into when I see Layla. So she's 4th grade now.
Yep.
In 3rd grade is when I really saw those friendships and those joys and those, all the things that you're like, you see some of your young self in your kids, right? Where you're like, oh my God, I remember.
It's so innocent.
Friendship felt. But also 3rd grade, 4th grade is when it starts being a little bit more
Clicky.
judgmental or a little more clicky. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but want to be like, this girl, I'm already got like alerts in my adult head, but how do I not put that on my daughter? So I want to talk a little bit about that and some tools I can give her. Like, let's channel some of your mom in here, right? Raising Jess. My mom was from the notion of, they're just jealous.
Yeah.
They're just jealous of you. Don't take it personally. Well, me, I take everything personally. I'm a sponge. I'm sensitive. I'm ADHD. So I'm even more hyper fixated on things, right?
Yep.
I took that as, be careful with how you show up around other women, because if you're too much, they're going to be jealous.
Yep.
So, like, just talk about that a little bit from not only the adult, but like the kid and working with kids perspective. And Jess,
I think you said it earlier too. I heard you say, like, you as a mom kind of struggle with how are you supposed to guide our kids with friendship. And I would say to you, Nico, you need to guide them and help them. And this is why I do what I do as a social emotional consultant. And, like, I run social groups and pragmatic groups and help kids build friendship. And just like you said, everybody needs a Miss Jess. It's not just me working with kids with special needs. It's somebody talking to you about relationships and friendships and understanding, oh, if somebody is doing this, here are the different reasons. And I think as parents, we need to do a better job at giving our kids perspective. But then we also have to recognize the developmental stage they're at. Mm-hmm. Inferencing and perspective taking skills increase as a kid gets older chronologically. But you have to guide them along the way and point. So basically what I'm saying is, to Layla, you want to point out things, like, but it's a lot more established curiosity for her. So it's really your language. It's, Layla, I'm hearing that you're telling me that you're feeling like Sophie is kind of excluding Lily. Let's talk about that. Why do we think that is? Do we think Sophie is like, oh, Lily doesn't play soccer and I play soccer. So we don't have anything in common because I'm sporty and she's not. See, so right away from a young age, we form these groups and stereotypes. And I think we parents influence tremendously because they form stereotypes. I only want my kid hanging out with athletes. Or, oh, my kid's not an athlete, so they can't hang out with the athletes. Why are we doing that? Like, yes, your kid established friends in a group based on what they're in. Say they're in gymnastics, they have gymnastics friends. But I think you always want to pull from a place of inclusion. So you always want to challenge your kids on, cool, those, like Nicki, you and I talk about too, we have friends for different reasons. And I think at the end of the day, we all need to build on that. Meaning, I have my neighbor who I can just grab a glass of wine with and talk about anything that's not kid related, which is awesome. Sometimes I need that. Yep. And then I have you where we can talk about all sorts of different layers of life, or we can just be like, hey, what essential oil and what coffee brand are you drinking now? Right? Or, hey, have you found the new favorite rosé? Oh, yeah, Dunkin'. And so it's, it's like,
no, totally.
It's just figuring. So I think my message to parents is guide your kids on friendships. It is okay, Nicki, for you to say, you know what? Listening to Layla is making me have a little bit of a red flag about that kid. So I coined something that I would really love to write a book on, where I call it red light, yellow light, green light friends. And so green light is like they're loyal. They meet all your values as a friend, right? So you're golden. And this works for all age kids. And I think adults need it. And then you have the yellow light friends where you need to be more cautious. Maybe they're the kid that's sometimes is nice and includes you and other times not. Or maybe they're more grumpy because they have things going on in their family. Or maybe they're like, sure, they're so-called the like behavioral kid in class and they're like, oh mom, this kid's too loud, whatever it is. And then you have a red light friend where it's like, wow, this friend was not nice to you. This friend said some unfriendly things. You need to take space from this friend and be aware. So, but the key to this is that I tell kids that friends are not stuck in one light. So if George is in the red light, that doesn't mean he's always going to be there. It means right now he's there because you're protecting yourself, because he's excluded you, or he's been unfriendly, or he's not invited you to his party, whatever it is. Because I think we have to build that empathy and also protection. Because I work with a lot of kids with autism where they struggle. They tend to pick the wrong peer. They pick the kid that isn't inclusive and nice. And it's a lot of times is because they have more decreased awareness. So they're not scanning their social environment. As adults, we don't do that. We need to do that. And so they go like, they're like, oh, that kid's wearing a like SpongeBob shirt and I like SpongeBob. I'm going to go there. Or you know what? That kid's just sitting next to me. So I'm going to try to hang out with him. But yet that kid's the one that's like, I don't know, too cool for school, or just it hasn't said nice things. So that's why I think in general, we need to coin and come up with easy parenting strategies to help our kids form friendships. Because let's be honest, there is a strong peer influence across all of your life. So who you associate with is going to affect you. And for kids especially, I see like, parents will be like, I don't understand why now he's just kind of being like a little asshole. And I'm like, well, let's check ourselves. Let's look at like who's he hanging out with? Who are the groups? And sometimes the so-called little asshole is also really struggling at school, but he's not sharing that. Right? So it's like, how can we as parents also like even me, I'm quick to want to solve the problem for my kids, even in college, like, but they're still learning how to build friends and they have those strong groups. So
yeah, no,
I don't know.
I love that. I just got so much out of that. Like the red light, I'm going to use that 1,000%. I'll probably clip this and show Layla because Layla doesn't want to hear it from me all the time. She'll
Yeah.
Oh, Jessa said.
Exactly. That's the power of having other people guide, is sometimes like, you know, that's, for example, that's one of those tools that I would love to get out to the world, because I've seen it firsthand work for like, and I've been doing that for like 10 years, where I just, one day I came up with association with lights, because, and then it's a quick cue. It's, oh, is that, I think that kid's a red light, right? Oh, okay. So tomorrow let's do a better job of being aware of like, you're taking space from that kid right now, because you guys have like gotten into it at school, or you just aren't meshing right now. But I think it's, like I said, it's really important to parent that. It does, you want to provide hope for your kids, because if they really want that friend, then you don't want to bash their self-esteem on, well, nope, you're different, you can't be friends with that kid.
Right. And
And
that I think what I'm guilty of is seeing something, communicating what pisses me off about the person in almost like this Italian aggressive way,
yeah,
because the way I am with my daughter is like, it's almost like what you and I related to, like with field hockey, right? Like I'm
yeah,
the like I go into coaching mode,
yeah,
like sport coaching mode. And I'm realizing that it's more giving her the tools is going to empower her so much more than me telling her what she
yeah.
should think and feel.
And increasing awareness, right?
Yep.
So you want to, it's like that language is so important for you to be able to say, like, you got to, number one, parents, on everything, you have to validate what you see your kid feeling. So point out those feelings. I hear you, Layla. I hear that you're saying you're feeling frustrated by this and happy by this. Like, name it, right? Name that feeling, so they start to understand, oh, yeah, okay, when I hang out, or like, for example, I had a mom the other day say, gosh, every time my kid hangs out with this kid, he comes home like really grumpy and agitated. And finally, the kid told me, oh, well, this kid never wants to do anything I want to do. There's no compromise. That's a whole nother thing with friendship. It needs to be give and take. It needs to be compromised. It needs to be reciprocal. So as adults, I don't think we have as much energy to, if we put in a lot and don't receive back, I think we're stronger and quicker to be like, oh, okay, I'm just not going to reach out to that friend tomorrow. Whereas kids are still learning that developmentally. But so I think as an adult too, I know myself, I sometimes get stuck on like, gosh, I feel like I always go over to her house, or I feel like I always reach out to invite her, but she doesn't invite me. Right. And so I think we still as adults can also be more gracious about that and
Yeah.
figure out, what is that about for you? Like, why do I care so much if I'm going to her house
Oh yeah.
or her
There will
coming
be
to mine?
there will be viral TikToks that I see, because the world that I live in is like in the digital world of seeing what's trending. And there's so many TikToks where women are like, I have a rule. I will try 3 times. And if that person doesn't reciprocate 3 times, then I'm done with the friendship. And I'm like, that
Yeah,
is so like just,
it's fixed. It's a real fixed mindset.
yeah, it's like a scorekeeping thing. And I don't think life should be that. Like you said, there's gonna be ebbs and flows. Like my divorce sucked the life out of me. I'm sick of hearing myself talk about it. I'm sick of the energy I put into it. I'm
Yep.
sick of all the addiction I had around it. I was
Yeah.
addicted to the pain of it. And I'm realizing now like it's okay to evolve. And
Yep.
now that's where my friendships will evolve too. And the right people are going to accept that I'm on this journey.
Nikki,
The right,
that's awesome. I mean,
yeah.
that's huge for you. That's like massive. So that you were able to dig a little deeper and like have some self compassion for yourself
Oh, yeah.
and recognize like, okay, cool. I can, again, I don't necessarily like saying close the chapter, because we are a book. And that's what's so beautiful about us. Think
Yeah.
about all of us human beings. Like, that's what I love about connection and belonging, is like, we all have so many different layers that if we were willing to just bring to the table and not worry about, well, what are they going to think, just bring
Totally.
it to the table. Like,
Totally.
pull up that chair.
Women are
It's like
so
yoga.
we are so hard on ourselves. And I have to remember like conversations you and I had from way back. You were the person I used to say, oh my gosh, like I don't feel as like one-on-one connected within this group the way other people do. I'm more of a group person.
Yep.
But I also, if I was in a romantic relationship, I can admit it now. A lot of times I put that relationship first.
Sure.
before friendships. But what my friends saw, probably, likely, maybe I'm making it up in my own insecurities, but what my friends saw was, oh, she's got a guy, she's going to put him first. But me growing up, that was my family, my grandparents, like my grandmother and my grandfather put each other first, and all the friendships were like a secondary. So I think like we have to remember and be kinder to each other. We all have different upbringings. We
Hmm.
all have different expectations of what friendship should be, what it fulfills within us.
Hmm.
And maybe if we just peel those layers back, we'll realize like it's okay to be upfront about what you're looking for in a friendship.
Yeah. And I think, again, we can meet each other where we're at. Like my mom always coins the term, well, that's just how they roll, Jess. And I think that it's so fitting. Accept where someone is, but don't, like, I feel like there's this, I'm going to use me as an example. I'm so called in an empty nesting um, stage of life.
Yep.
And so I've run into people and they're like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. I see you and Ryan are like living the best life. Again, I'm going to say it, Nicki, social media puts out something that is, yes, you are the exception because you're so authentic, but a lot of times it's pretty fake. And I don't think people know how to filter that. Like, I just recently finished the book Anxious Generation, and it is mind blowing.
Mind blowing.
Yeah.
I'm
So it's
listening to
like,
audio, of
it's,
course, me and my
yeah.
reading abilities, but I listen and I watch the snippets. So talk about that more. I'm going to shush.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is like, it's like as adults, like, why are we still getting jealous if we're like not invited? And that's, to me, it is social media. Like, it's kind of abnormal that I know what you did on a Friday night. Like, why should I know what everybody does every night? But yet I'm subject to it. I put it on my story on Instagram because I I like highlighting my life, or I'm enjoying like that I'm in Catalina with my husband. And then I get a bunch of comments of like, oh, so jealous. Oh, that's so fun. Oh man, I'm sitting at home with my toddlers. Like, see where that's what we say. Like, it's sort of like, again, it should be like, oh, okay, Jess is in this stage, but that doesn't mean behind the scenes she's not parenting. But there's this, it's always like, I feel like we need to all work at like accepting where we're at and not, again, I don't think competitive is a word, but like not wishing we were somewhere else. So like dig your heels in where you're at. And then also though, protect yourself, and maybe I hate to say not be so sensitive, but it's kind of like, if you want to be invited to something, or you, I don't know, want to join a group, why not put yourself out there and be like, hey, it looks like you had a really great time. I would love to get together soon. Instead of the like,
I'd
oh,
love to be considered next time you guys all get together.
yeah, not the, oh, like, oh gosh, where was my invite? I know I'm so busy at home and it looks like I'm not available. And I mean, and then that
I've
leaves,
gotten, I've gotten to the point where I am comfortable communicating those things because it's all back to the self-worth.
yep,
Being okay being alone, really loving yourself when you're alone,
yep,
loving your own thoughts when you go for a walk without your headphones on.
yeah,
And
that's
then
huge.
it's all the stuff that people told you before you could love someone else, before you can be in a great relationship, you got to love yourself. I always thought when I was younger, I did love myself, but I didn't know myself.
Yep,
I loved myself because I was a confident person who
yep,
believed in myself. But there's a difference between knowing and honoring your feelings and your layers. You know what I mean? You don't have to be the funny girl all the time, Nicki. You can also be funny and some days be emotional. And like, that's wonderful.
yeah.
That's great. But
It's like, yeah, it's finding that balance and accepting the stage you're at. And sure, that doesn't mean you're not like jealous sometimes of like, yeah, I'm not changing diapers anymore, right? But like the point was, as a mom, there's all these different stages you hit, and for the most part everybody hits them. It's just at different times, so it's accepting. And I'm not saying I do it perfect, because it's the same thing sometimes, because I work with kids all day and then I'm raising adult kids. I, on my weekends, I don't necessarily have interest in going to my friend who has a 7-year-old's birthday party, right? Which then I need to check myself and realize, oh, you know what? To continue that friendship, there still has to be that give and take of like, you know what? I can pop in, you know. So it's all of us all together kind of, I don't know, but I think we all as adults could be better at the balance piece of it. You know, like they always talk about too, like it's important to have date night. It's important to have girl night, you know, like at the core of all of us women, we do all need that. It's just, we have to be willing to put some time and effort into it to kind of find it. Or like, you know, during COVID, I was just thinking the other day, I talked to you guys, like the Yukon girls, more during COVID than I did after, because we made a point.
Slow down and do it.
We made a point to have a Zoom, and we said 5:00, bring a glass of wine or don't bring a glass of wine. Show up. Like the other day, Nicki, after we left Weekapog, I was like, dude, and I am that planner, and you guys rely on that for me. So like, and I'm happy to have that role. So I was just thinking the other day, like, why can't we do once a month? That should be somewhat easy to commit to, or maybe it's twice a month so that the people that can't do one can do the other. And we pop on here for like an hour and you could come at any time, because just seeing your face makes me happy.
Totally. I had this warm and fuzzy. And then like, I just need to tell you all why you are friendship goals is like, we leave Weekapog and I get this in the mail with a custom note for me. And it's just like, this is really all that I need to know that you love me.
Yep.
I love you. I think you're just amazing. And deep down, selfishly, I just hope that this experience will make you start your own podcast, because when I've seen you in action with your kids and families, like the world needs you. We need more Jessa. So write that book, get a podcast, be a guest on podcasts if you don't have time to do your own. But like, I just want to show the world people that are behind me, because I do believe the people behind me to be here. My heart feels so full after I talked to Jess. I hope you loved the episode as much as I loved my conversation with her. If you want to follow her for more, she's at Social and Kind, trying to push her to post more and to say more, because like I said in the interview, we need more Jessa. We need more Jessas in the world. Everybody needs a Coach Jess. So thank you for listening in, and thank you for making me part of your world. Stay tuned for more Unplugged with Nicki Marie. And if you follow along, you want to follow along for more behind the scenes, we're at Nicki Marie Inc. on Instagram, Nicki Unplugged. Oh wait, if you want to follow for more behind the scenes of this podcast, please follow along on Instagram and on YouTube, Nicki Marie Inc. Holla at your girl, say for more, dab.